Diddy's future has been thrown into jeopardy following his conviction on serious charges. The mogul who had been king of hip-hop, fashion, and business for decades now faces the reality of prison time. The legal consequences are steep, and the question everyone is asking is what could happen to Diddy in jail? The charges against them, racketeering, prostitution, human trafficking, are not something any ordinary person would want to face, let alone someone with the amount of power, influence, and wealth that Diddy possesses. But now, as the legal battle continues and the appeal looms ahead, the possibility of time behind bars ivory real, the question is, how will Diddy fare in prison? And what will his life look like if he's forced to face the consequences? Before we dive deeper into what might happen to Diddy in jail, make sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the bell icon. That way, you won't miss any updates about Diddy's trial, his fate, and everything happening in the world of entertainment. Let's get back to it. For someone like Diddy, the idea of prison is almost unimaginable. For decades, he's been the CEO, the one calling the shots, the one who sets the terms and rules. But now, as the court proceedings move forward, he's facing the possibility of being locked away in a prison cell. What could his life in jail really be like? Could someone like Diddy, the man who has been a fixture of success and wealth, survive behind bars? Or would the experience completely change him? Stay tuned as we break down what life in prison would mean for Diddy, whether he'd be sent to a private facility or an average prison, and how his time in jail could affect his mental health and empire. Let's dive deeper into the hidden truth behind what could happen if Diddy ends up behind bars. Could he endure it, or would this be the beginning of the end for his legacy? The severity of Diddy's charges means that prison time could be a very real possibility. While many see him as a mogul, a business genius, and the face of success, the reality is that jail doesn't care about your fame. If convicted and sentenced, Diddy would have to face the harsh truth of life behind bars. But what could actually happen to someone like Diddy in jail? First, we need to understand the difference between private prisons and public prisons. Diddy's wealth and status in the industry would likely place him in a private facility where the conditions are far from the typical experience of a regular inmate. Private prisons tend to be reserved for high-profile individuals where a higher level of security is maintained to protect them, and also ensure they don't suffer from the usual prison violence. Here, Diddy would likely have more luxurious accommodations, including access to better food, a private cell, and perhaps even a personal security team. It's not uncommon for celebrities in similar situations to live in relative comfort compared to the average inmate, but it's still prison. It would still be a prison sentence. But what does this kind of environment do to a person like Diddy who has spent his entire life surrounded by luxury, power, and freedom? The psychological toll of being incarcerated, no matter how cushioned, is real. Even though Diddy will likely have access to the best of what a private prison has to offer, the fact remains that he would still be confined. The loss of freedom, the isolation from the world, and the lack of control could affect him deeply. He's always been the one calling the shots, but here he would be just another inmate. And despite his wealth and power, he would still be subject to the rules of the prison system. Beyond the daily grind of prison life, Diddy's mental health would inevitably be tested. Being cut off from his family, his business, and his fans would be incredibly difficult for someone who is used to being in the public eye, constantly surrounded by people who depend on him. Diddy has always been a leader, but in prison he would be forced to redefine what leadership means. Without the control, without the platforms, and without the power he has spent his life amassing, the isolation would take a toll, and this psychological pressure could change him in ways that even Diddy may not anticipate. Diddy would also have to adjust to the prison hierarchy, a world where power dynamics are often very different from what he's used to. In a private facility, he would likely be treated with respect because of his wealth and status. But in any prison, there are always people who challenge authority. And Diddy's name alone wouldn't necessarily protect him from trouble. While he wouldn't be subject to the same kind of harsh conditions found in public prisons, he would still have to contend with an environment where violence, intimidation, and constant stress are daily realities, then there's the question of whether Diddy could continue running his empire while behind bars. Celebrities in prison aren't completely cut off from the outside world. They often have access to phones, emails, and other means of communication. Diddy could still potentially manage his business remotely, stay in touch with his team, and continue to make decisions even from prison. But it wouldn't be the same as being in the driver's seat. Without his presence, his brands like Bad Boy Records, Shaw John, and others might struggle to maintain the momentum they once had. His public image would be at risk, too. Without Diddy leading the charge, his empire would likely feel the absence of its most powerful asset, him. In the end, the personal consequences of being in jail might be the hardest for Diddy to bear. The loss of his freedom, the emotional toll of being away from his family, and the constant scrutiny of being a high-profile inmate would undoubtedly affect his legacy and career. Could he bounce back from all this? Could he continue to build what he started, or would time behind bars change him forever? Stay tuned, because the truth of what could happen to Diddy in jail is just the beginning. Would his character, his power, and his vision survive prison? Or would it reshape him in ways we can't yet imagine? As Diddy contemplates the possibility of prison time, there's a reality he has to face that no amount of wealth or fame can shield him from: the psychological impact of incarceration. Even in a private facility where the luxuries of his high status might be more abundant, the loss of freedom would be a daily battle. No matter how many comforts or privileges he receives, nothing could replace the fundamental feeling of being locked away from the world. Diddy has built an empire on his ability to control his surroundings, make decisions that affect not just his future, but the future of an entire culture. His vision has shaped music, fashion, and entrepreneurship in ways that few others can claim. But behind bars, that power and control would be stripped away. The daily routine in prison, the waiting, the silence. None of this is something he can escape. The most difficult part of his incarceration wouldn't be the physical confinement. It would be the mental toll of losing the autonomy he has always taken for granted. The psychological strain could be crushing. Diddy is a man used to leading, surrounded by people who rely on him. But in prison, the tables turn. He would have to follow rules, live in a world where the inmates hold power over the smallest details of his life. The disconnect from his family, friends, and the empire he's built could leave him feeling isolated, uncertain, and vulnerable in ways that he's never felt before. It's in these moments of isolation that many prisoners struggle to maintain their identity. For someone like Diddy, whose brand is so closely tied to confidence and leadership, the weight of not being in control might break even the most determined individual. And yet, Diddy has always been resilient. He's faced hurdles throughout his career that most would have never been able to overcome. Losing close friends, financial struggles, public feuds, legal disputes, and more. This trial, this potential prison time, may be just another chapter in a long history of setbacks he's turned into opportunities for growth. But this time, the stakes are higher. The real test won't just be surviving prison. It will whether Diddy can keep his mental sharpness and focus while incarcerated. Could he still run his empire from prison? With technology, legal access, and a strong team of people supporting him, it's possible that Diddy could continue to make decisions, strategize, and remain involved in his businesses, his brand, his vision, his culture. It's all built on his identity as the architect of everything he's created. If that's taken away, can Diddy still find purpose in a place where the only thing he can control is himself? There's another layer to this. Diddy has always been about influence, not just in his business dealings, but in his role in society. He's a public figure, a cultural leader, and a symbol of success. What happens to that legacy when he's confined behind walls? When this image is reduced to a criminal in the eyes of the world? Will Diddy's influence fade in the prison system? Or will he be able to find ways to continue inspiring people even from behind bars? One thing that could work in Diddy's favor is his reputation for reinvention. Even in the face of such a dark chapter, he has a history of bouncing back, of coming out stronger and more determined. His influence on the world of business, entertainment, and culture has always been rooted in his ability to transform challenges into opportunities. This moment of hardship could become his latest opportunity to prove that no matter what happens, Diddy will always rise again. But while there's hope for recovery, the psychological reality of being incarcerated would leave a mark. Time behind bars, whether it's a few months or years, would challenge every ounce of his resilience. Can he stay focused on the bigger picture? Can he maintain his mental and emotional strength? Diddy will have to navigate the toughest battle of his life. One that isn't about fighting a court case, but fighting the internal forces that could break him down and challenge his ability to continue leading from within a cell. So, as we look ahead, one question remains. How will Diddy cope with this reality? Will he rise above idas he has with every challenge in the past? Or will the toll of incarceration sting him in ways no one expected? The truth is, Diddy's next moves could be more important than anything he's ever done before. The hidden truth of his time in jail could shape his legacy in ways that will be remembered for years to come. As the idea of Diddy being incarcerated starts to settle in, the question arises. Could Diddy's empire serve without him? Could he still maintain the control and influence that has shaped his career for decades? The reality is Diddy's influence doesn't just come from being in the room. It's in his vision, his ability to connect, and his leadership that extends beyond any physical barrier. Even behind bars, he might still find ways to remain an active force in the industry. The world is constantly changing. And if there's something Diddy has proven time and time again, it's his ability to adapt and innovate no matter the circumstances. If Diddy does end up behind bars, his team will be key. He's built an empire not just on his own strength, but on talented individuals. He surrounded himself with bad boy records to his clothing line. John Diddy's brand is flourishing. His team, those who have helped build his businesses, will likely step up and carry on the work in his absence. While he won't be able to physically manage his companies, the decisions and vision Diddy has instilled in them will continue to guide his empire. This isn't just about making money. It's about keeping his influence alive, ensuring that his legacy persists even when he's not physically present to oversee it. But there's a deeper question. What would it be like for Diddy mentally and emotionally? In prison? Sure, Diddy's used to Thelamalite, the fame, the influence. But the real test would be how he deals with the loneliness and isolation that come with being behind bars. For a man who has always surrounded himself with people, constantly being in the public eye, jail might feel like a world he can't control, a world where his power is no longer recognized. Diddy has built his entire life on being larger than life, on being the man who's always in control, being placed in an environment where his every move is scrutinized, where his identity is reduced to a prison number. How does someone like Diddy cope? It could be crushing to a man who's lived a life so completely different. The psychological effects of that could be immense. And for someone like Diddy, who spent years carefully curating his image, it's possible that the mental toll of prison could be one of the hardest things to deal with. But Diddy is a fighter. He's been through hard times before. In fact, much of his career has been defined by his ability to overcome obstacles. Whether it was the loss of friends, business challenges, or public controversies, Diddy has consistently shown that he can turn adversity into opportunity. Prison might take away his freedom, but it won't take away his resilience, his creativity, or his drive to create. If anything, it could fuel him to come back stronger than ever once he gets out. Diddy knows how to use his time and his influence even when things seem impossible. However, the emotional cost is something Diddy can't entirely avoid. Time behind bars would mean he'd be separated from his family, from his children, and from the world he's worked so hard to build. The weight of that could potentially affect his mental health, and it's something no one can truly predict until it happens. Would Diddy be able to bounce back after this? Would his mindset shift in ways that would ultimately affect the way he approaches life and business once he's out? These are questions we can't fully answer yet, but it's something that will be critical to his eventual comeback. One of the more fascinating aspects of Diddy's situation is his ability to leverage the media. He's used his public persona to his advantage for years, shaping the narrative around him in ways that benefit his brand. Even behind bars, Diddy could potentially still maintain control of how his story is told. Would he use this time to redefine himself, to tell the world his side-off story, or to continue the work of reinventing his legacy? There's a sense that Diddy's journey in jail could be transformative in ways that no one has predicted. Sure, it would be mentally, emotionally, and physically. But Diddy has always used adversity as fuel for innovation, and this time might be no different. What could happen to Diddy in jail? The answer could very well be that he comes out not just as the mogul he was before, but as a new, stronger version of himself with a vision that could propel him to even greater heights. The question is no longer whether he can survive jail, but what he will create from it. One thing's for sure, this is far from the end of Diddy's story. If Diddy does find himself behind bars, it's not just about serving physically. It's about how he chooses to navigate the mental and emotional landscape of prison. Diddy has spent his entire career as the man who's always in charge. The one who's making the moves, setting the trends, and letting the culture, to suddenly be reduced to just another inmate with no ability to control his surroundings, could test him in ways that nothing else has. Prison would not just take his freedom. It would take his ability to shape the narrative, something Diddy Hazelways excelled at. However, Diddy is a man of unbreakable willpower, and his survival instincts are sharper than ever. He knows how to turn obstacles into opportunities. The ability to still manage his business and his brand from behind bars while facing the emotional weight of being incarcerated would be his greatest test yet. He could still connect with his team, make decisions, and guide his companies in a direction even while incarcerated. It's not unheard of for inmates with influence to maintain connections to the outside world. And Diddy, being the mogul he is, could leverage that power in ways that will allow him to continue shaping his empire, even without physically being in control. The truth is, Diddy's business empire might be the one thing that keeps him grounded during this challenging time. His connection to Bad Boy Records, his fashion lines, his media presence, all of it relies on him to stay at the top. But for the first time, he would have to let go and trust others to carry on his legacy in his absence. Would that feel like a betrayal of everything he's worked for? Or would it give him the space to focus on personal growth and reinvention? For Diddy, the idea of delegating might be the hardest part of this whole ordeal. After all, he's always been the one making things happen. Now, for the first time, he might have to step back, and that could be the themament of transformation. Mentally, Diddy could undergo a profound evolution. Time in prison could push him to reconsider everything from his past mistakes to the legacy he wants to leave behind. The moment he steps into that cell, his world changes. He could become introspective, considering the choices that got him to this point, and use that time to work on healing. It's likely that his relationship with his family will also become more crucial than ever. The strength of his family unit could give him the emotional support he needs to keep pushing forward. His children, his partners, and the people closest to him may be the driving force behind his redemption. They could become the reason he holds on to his humanity during this time of extreme uncertainty. But there's also the possibility that this experience changes Diddy fundamentally. Not in a negative way, but in a way that could ultimately make him a more empathetic, stronger, and more grounded individual. The man who enters prison may not be the same as the man who walks out. He will have gone through a mental and emotional crucible, something few people can truly understand unless they have experienced it themselves. Could this lead Diddy to find peace in ways he never expected? Could the stress and chaos of his life and career pave the way for him to become a more complete version of himself? One of the most intriguing parts of Diddy's potential time in prison is how he will maintain his relevance. Diddy's public persona is part of what's made him so powerful. His ability to stay in the spotlight, to captivate the public's attention, and to lead by example. Even behind bars, Diddy could use his platform to speak out, inspire, and remain a voice for millions. The way he chooses to handle himself in prison could send a powerful message. If he handles it with grace and resilience, he could reinforce his plessy as a cultural leader. Someone who can't be silenced by any setback, no matter how severe. Prison could become the ultimate test of his character. And how rises from this could define his legacy for the next generation. But it's not just about his empire. It's also about who Diddy becomes during this time. The journey he's on isn't just about surviving. It's about thriving, evolving, and embracing the challenge that could turn this dark chapter into one of his most powerful stories of all. Could prison be the ultimate place for him to rediscover his true purpose and come back as a more focused and inspired version of himself? Only time will tell, but one thing is for sure. Diddy is Eamon who refuses to be defined by his circumstances. And if anyone can turn this situation into an opportunity, it's Shim. Diddy's time in prison could be a massive turning point, not just for his future, but for the way the world views him. With everything at stake, his empire, his legacy, his family, he'd have to navigate the most difficult chapter of his life. But here's the thing. Diddy has always thrived under pressure. When others thought he was down and out, he proved them wrong. Now facing the reality of jail, his determination to overcome this challenge could set the stage for a breathtaking trans. Diddy's resilience is unmatched. He's weathered storms before, from public scandals to career setbacks, and each time he's found a way to rise again. This time the stakes are higher, but if history has taught us anything, it's that Diddy doesn't back down easily. If anything, this trial by fire could forge a new version of him. One that's even more focused, more driven, and more committed to his purpose than ever before. In jail, Diddy will likely be forced to confront the most personal aspects of his life. The parts that didn't involve running a business or being the face of a brand. It's one thing to live a life of luxury surrounded by Yasmin and a team that does most of the work, but in prison, it's just him. No distractions, no escape. Diddy will have no choice but to face his own inner struggles, his thoughts, his regrets, his fears. This might be the deepest reflection he's ever had to do, and it could redefine who he is. However, Diddy's ability to adapt will be what sets him apart. Prison could provide him with a rare opportunity to reset everything. No longer will he be living life on fast forward, caught up in the whirlwind of business and fame. In prison, Diddy will have the time and space to reflect on what really matters. His values, his relationships, and the legacy he truly wants to leave behind. This isn't just about survival. It's about reinvention. While the physical constraints of jail would undoubtedly be tough, Diddy's mind has always been his greatest asset. Even if he's physically confined, his creativity and his drive aren't going to just disappear. In fact, this time behind bars could be where he develops new ideas, strategies, and visions for his future. What if he uses this time to explore new ventures, business ideas that are outside of his usual comfort zone? Creative projects that allow him to express himself in ways he never could before? Prison could be the perfect place for him to work on what's next. A different kind of Diddy, the mogul who built his empire by turning challenges into triumphs, could come out of jail with a new vision for the future. One that might surprise everyone? We all know Diddy as the man who set trends, who changed the game, but what if this time he could change the narrative entirely? Not just for himself, but for the entire world. Diddy's influence, despite his current situation, could remain unshaken. The man who once held the music industry and culture in the palm of his hands could still shape the future from behind bars. While he's physically restrained, the mind of Diddy is still a force to be reckoned with. He might not be able to do the work he's used to doing, but that doesn't mean he won't have a profound impact. In fact, his story could inspire millions, showing them that no matter how hard life knocks you down, you can always get back up. The question is, how will the world view Diddy after this? Will they see him as the man who lost everything? Or will they see him as the man who came out of prison stronger than ever, having turned a dark chapter into an extraordinary opportunity? Diddy's story isn't over yet. If anything, this could be the start of the most remarkable phase in his journey. One that will redefine his legacy for the generations to come. What happens in the next few years could be more impactful than any album, business deal, or fashion line. This is about Diddy Soul, his journey to reclaim everything he's ever worked for, and to build something even greater than before. Theckenbach might just be bigger than anyone imagined. The world is watching, and one thing's for sure. Diddy is not going down without a fight. As the days in prison drag on, Diddy finds himself in a battle he never thought he'd have to fight. A battle for his own identity. It's one thing to be an icon, a mogul, and a public figure. It's another thing entirely to be stripped of all your status and put into a place where your worth isn't measured by what you've built, but by something as simple as survival? Yet in this place of confinement, Diddy's resilience and determination begin to shine brighter than ever. The man who's known for building empires and leading cultures has now been handed a unique challenge to rebuild himself from the inside out. Time in prison is a test, not just of physical endurance, but of mental and emotional strength. But Diddy isn't the kind of person who's ever been afraid of tough times. In fact, some might argue that his greatest successes have come after he's been knocked down. Every obstacle, every setback has only fueled his desire to rise. He's faced controversy. He's had his fair share of public scrutiny. And yet, Diddy has always found a way to turn the page and move forward. Now, it's no different. What makes this chapter so powerful, though, is that Diddy isn't just fighting for survival. He's fighting for something greater. He's fighting for his legacy, his future, and the legacy of his family. The man who's always been in control now faces the humbling realization that he can't call all the shots. But rather than retreat into bitterness or anger, Diddy is doing what he's done best his entire life. He's adapting, he's learning how to thrive within limitations, how to use what's available to him to reclaim his influence. Even behind bars, Diddy can use his influence to inspire others, to show them that no matter how low you've fallen, you can always rise. Diddy's mind is still as sharp as ever. He's not just sitting in his cell, he's constantly thinking, constantly creating. This time in prison could be his chance to rethink everything, to find new inspiration in the unlikeliest of places. For a man who has spent years surrounded by the noise of the public eye, the silence of prison might be exactly what he needs to find new purpose. It's the quiet before the storm, the time when he can reflect on everything he's done, everything he's built, and everything he still wants to achieve. In prison, Diddy has the tomato redesign his future and maybe even come up with ideas and strategies that will continue to shake the business world once he gets out. It's not just about Diddy building his empire again, it's about rebuilding his purpose. He's always been about more than just wealth. He's about changing lives, shaping culture, and giving back. Prison could give him the perspective to go deeper into these values, to question what truly matters, and to discover new ways of using his influence for something more meaningful. The man who built a billion-dollar empire isn't just a businessman. He's a visionary. This time, behind bars might be the perfect time for him to rethink what success means and create something even bigger than he ever could before. But what about the public's view of him? Diddy has always been in the spotlight, and while in prison, his public image will undoubtedly be scrutinized. Will people see him as a fallen star, or will they see him as the man who endured the hardest of times and came out victorious? The narrative is still in Diddy's hands. He's not just a figure in the media anymore. He's someone who can turn his personal struggle into something universal, something that resonates with millions who are fighting their own battles. The impact of Diddy's time in prison could ripple through the entertainment industry, the business world, and his fans. He could come out of this experience more human, more connected to those who have followed him for years. His vulnerability, his ability to show the world that even he, the mogul, can brought down but not destroyed, could change everything. His recovery, his redemption, and his comeback could inspire a whole new generation of people who see Diddy not as an untouchable celebrity, but as a man who fought through adversity and came out stronger for it. The real question now isn't just about what happens to Diddy in jail, but what happens after. Will he continue to lead with the same power and influence he once had, or will prison transform him into someone even more powerful? The world is waiting, and Diddy is ready to show them that no matter the obstacles, he will rise again. The end of his story in jail? Not even close. The next chapter is just beginning. Diddy's time behind bars would undoubtedly be the most testing experience of his life. The confinement, the loss of control, the uncertainty of what's next. This would challenge everything he's ever known. But there's something crucial to remember. Diddy is not the kind of person who stays down for long. This might be a dark chapter, but it's not the end. In fact, this could be the beginning of something even more powerful than his previous reign. In prison, Diddy will face obstacles that no amount of wealth or influence can shield him from. He will experience the loss of autonomy, the mental toll, and the emotional strain of being isolated from the world he's helped create. Yet, for someone who's always thrived on overcoming adversity, this might be the ultimate test. How does a man who's built an empire from scratch, who's faced so much already, react when everything is stripped away? How does he build when the world he's known is no longer at his fingertips? The truth is, Diddy's not just in prison for the mistakes of his past, he's learning from them. He's always been a visionary, someone who takes risks and creates change. If anyone can turn this dark experience into a chance for personal growth, it's him. While others might struggle with the loss of power, Diddy could use this time to reinvent himself. He's been through the highest highs, but now he has the chance to reflect on what really matters. Could this time of confinement actually help him discover a new purpose? One that's even more impactful than the empire he's already built. As Diddy moves through this trying time, he'll likely realize that true power comes not from the money or the brands he's built, but from the ability to stay true to himself in the face of unimaginable challenges. And while this time in prison might feel like a setback, it could be the catalyst for his greatest comeback yet. After all, it's not the failures that define someone. It's how they bounce back from them. But even beyond the business world, Diddy's influence is bigger than just making money or running companies. He has always been a cultural leader, someone who shapes the direction of music, fashion, and beyond. And while he might be physically confined, his vision and creativity can never be locked away. In prison, he could still find ways to stay connected to his team, to brainstorm ideas, and even lay the groundwork for what's next. The world he created could continue to grow even from behind bars. The most important question, though, is whether Diddy can embrace this time as an opportunity for personal redemption. He's been a figure of power and control, but could this moment teach him the power of vulnerability? Could he come out of this experience a different man, more grounded, more connected to his roots, and more determined than ever to build something that lasts? The Diddy we know may be changed by this experience, but fundamental truth is that he's a survivor. He's always found a way to rise, and this time will be no different. Prison may try to break him, but it's clear that it won't be the end of his story. This chapter could be where Diddy writes the most powerful part of his legacy, not just as a mogul, but as a man who overcame the greatest obstacle of all. The world may have counted him out, but Diddy's story is far from over. He's just getting started. And when he walks out of that prison, he will be ready to prove that no matter how low you fall, you can always rise higher. The best part of Diddy's journey is still to come.